All right, can folks see the screen? If you can type into the chat box, you can in fact see the PowerPoint. The PowerPoint states Ramadan webinar for yes students. And a reminder, can everyone please mute themselves so that we have some clarity in sound while we go through this webinar. We'll have an opportunity at the very end for everyone to ask questions should you have them, but please feel free to type questions into the chat box should you have them. You're welcome to do that as well. And we'll get to them at the very end. All right, so with no further ado, my name is Megan Lysett. I am the YES Program Manager for American Council. So we are the lead grantee with the YES program, and we are so happy to be chatting with you today about Ramadan. You are the first cohort to be experiencing Ramadan here in the US starting in May. This is a really exciting thing for our program, given that we work in countries with significant Muslim populations, to be able to share this very special holiday. And I do have one co-presenter with me this afternoon. Her name is Hind, and I will let Hind introduce herself. Hind, are you still there?
Can you hear me?
There you go, Hind. There you go.
Oh, I forgot to unmute myself.
No problem.
Well, good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Hind Mekki, and I live outside of Chicago. And I'm one of the religious advisors for the YES program this year. And I had some really great opportunities to meet with some of your area coordinators and your local coordinators for a couple of times at conferences. But I'm really here to sort of be an extra support to you all if necessary, along with two other religious advisors. If you all are kind of have come across any challenges that are religious based that you haven't been able to sort of work through with your host families and your other support systems. So I am very excited to at least connect with you all in this way. I know we didn't get a chance to meet in the initial orientation when you first arrived.
Thank you, Hind. All right, everybody, here's a little bit of an overview of what our webinar is going to look at today. We're going to talk a little bit about the goal of the webinar and some of the activities that you are able to do in your host communities and with your host families. But we definitely want to make sure that as you come to the close of a very special year, your YES year in America, that you realize that these are optional activities for you. So we will list a number of optional activities, but I do want you to know these are all optional and meant to inspire you to choose one or two or maybe even three to do in your host community as a thank you to the community that opened their hearts to you at the beginning of the year and as you say goodbye to them during this special time of Ramadan. So the three ways that we'll chat about how you can celebrate Ramadan would be sharing and celebrating, advocating for the YES program, and volunteering. So we also want to see how you are doing this. So please do share out on social media throughout Ramadan how you are doing this. So you can use the hashtags KLYes, Why Hosting Matters, or Host for America. So any three of those will link it back to our program and make sure that we amplify the voice of YES so that people around the world can see the contributions current YES students are making during this special time of Ramadan. So share and celebrate. Just as you have shared about the YES program all year long and about your home countries and your home cultures and the unique traditions and celebrations that you all have, we are encouraging you to continue to share about your religion and your traditions this Ramadan. So for me, I would like to know, if you can chat in the chat box, how would you describe Ramadan to your family and or your host family and your friends in your host community? And you can chat that in the chat box. Anybody has some suggestions? All right, I'm not seeing too much activity in that chat box, so we will let you know some suggestions on how you could share what Ramadan is with an American who may be unaware of what this special holiday is all about. All right, Hind.
Yeah, so thankfully, I guess, many Americans actually are somewhat familiar with Ramadan. They know that it's a holy month, and they know that Muslims abstain from food, but they might not know that much more about it. And so in the last several years, we've been seeing a lot of major magazines and other media sharing recipes and things like that, and people kind of have a vague idea that Ramadan is a holy month for Muslims, but they don't really understand kind of why Muslims believe that it's sacred. And so as a couple of pieces of advice, as you've been spending the year sharing of your culture and of your faith and of your own personal kind of perspectives on both of those, it's really maybe a great thing to sort of let people know that yes, this is a holy month, but it's also, or I should say, and it's also a month of celebration. That Muslims believe that fasting is, that God has told us that fasting is a ritual that is prescribed for us, just like we pray, just like we give zakat, charity, just like we go to Hajj, that we also fast in the month of Ramadan. And that that we fast because it was a holy month for the Arabs before Islam was revealed, but we believe that it was revealed for us to fast in this month as a continuation of what Christians and Jews were also asked to do to fast. For example, Jews fast on Yom Kippur, and some Christians will fast in various ways during the month, during Lent, the period of Lent. And so, I think it's a great way to sort of share a religious activity with your host families by letting them know that this is something that Muslims all over the world will fast. A lot of Americans won't know, kind of the idea of moon sighting versus calculation. When does the month of Ramadan actually start? So it's maybe a great way to start conversations around what makes a month holy, what makes a time holy for Muslims. I would also recommend, because none of you, I assume, are scholars of the religion, but you're scholars of your own experience. So I think it would be really great to share with your host families and your host communities, when did you begin to fast? How did you start to fast? Like, for example, when I wanted to fast when I was a kid, my parents, I didn't really eat that much anyway. And my parents were like, why are you fasting? You don't need to fast. And so what I would do is I would have breakfast and lunch, and then I would fast from lunch to dinner. This is probably like when I was like 8, 9, 10 years old. And then I started to fast for real when I was like 12. And so, I would just share these kinds of stories with them, because it's not just that this is some kind of holy, religious, boring, ritual, but this is really, Ramadan is really a time, I think, all over the world where Muslims come together as families and as communities. And we're going to talk a little bit more throughout this webinar about how you can also create a little bit of a Ramadan feel here in America with your host community. I think some Americans will be familiar with, the 5 pillars of Islam. As we mentioned, Ramadan, fasting during the month of Ramadan is one of those pillars. One thing that's really critical, I think, for your host families to know is that although during Ramadan we fast from sunup to sundown, we also definitely are aware of our health. And part of that includes having suhoor or sehri, that pre-dawn meal. And it should be very healthy and have a lot of water and fruits and fiber for you. So just, make sure to talk with your host parents about what your menu usually is, and what makes sense for you to have. And so as an example for me, for suhoor, I usually have oatmeal and a banana or some kind of a fruit. I like to also, now that Ramadan is in the summer, I like to have like watermelon or cantaloupe, a fruit that has high water content. You can share with your host families, there are lots of recipes and menus that you can have for suhoor to make sure that, it's a healthy time for you, and also invite them. If you yourself, try to make something special for suhoor in your home country, perhaps it's something that you might want to share with them. But if that's something that they don't feel like they're going to be able to wake up early enough for you, just sort of make sure that everybody in the family does know that you'll be awake at that time if you want to observe suhoor, and you might be pottering around in the kitchen making your own food. And of course, the iftar is at sundown, as you all know. And I know that for many of us in our home countries, there are special foods that you have during Ramadan. Sometimes you're not going to be able to access those foods here in America. Try to think about what you could create as like your special Ramadan food here in America. If you live near a big city, you could probably find a restaurant or a grocery store that has samosas, for example, or something that might remind you of home. But if you don't live near a big city, think about what kind of new American Ramadan traditions you want to make.
Thank you, Hind. All right, so with that in mind, having some talking points about what Ramadan is, now how do you put that in action? How do you share that and celebrate Ramadan for the time that you are in the US and Ramadan is happening? We are asking that you post on your social media platforms using those 2 hashtags, Why Hosting Matters or Host for America, a shout out about how you plan to celebrate with your host family and friends. We encourage you to include pictures or videos, and we also want to encourage you to thank your host family, your host school, and your wonderful host communities for opening up their homes to you. And again, the hashtag, because you still are our YES students, is hashtag KLYes. You can also share little stories about the new friendships that you've built because of the YES program, and how that relates to Ramadan and the things that you are grateful for and the things that you will take home with you back to your home countries. We also want to encourage you to find an interfaith Ramadan event that may be taking place in your host community. You can invite your host family to come with you or your friends. Again, take photos, post them on social media. We want to be able to see you actively celebrating this really special holiday. And I think I've said it enough. Did we ask you enough? Please make sure that you tag us. We are so excited to see you, the cohort for academic year 2016-2017, how you will go out with a bang celebrating Ramadan with your host communities.
Yes, exactly. And I would also underscore this opportunity to develop and to build on your interfaith relationships. As I mentioned, Muslims believe that fasting is part of that Abrahamic tradition that Christians and Jews also participate in. But Ramadan is also a time when American Muslims do a lot of interfaith service, right? And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But, as you all know, Ramadan is also a time for us to share gifts and presents with our friends and families, our neighbors. And, here I just want to just sort of remind us that the gift does not have to be expensive. Everyone is on a limited budget. Think about what makes you you, and what makes you, likable and lovable to the people around you. Think about what you can make, whether it's a card that you can create, some cookies that you want to bake, something that will remind people of yourself, and just share that as part of your Ramadan experience with your host family and your friends. And one of my favorite Arab poets is Khalil Gibran, and a really important point of wisdom that he has says that you give but little when you give of your possessions. It's when you give of yourself that you truly give. And just as a reminder, of course, people choose to host yes students because they want to learn about people from around the world and want to kind of share their cultures with them. So think about that as you develop your ideas of what present or what gift you want to give.
Thank you, Hind. So again, we really are interested in seeing you share your very special Ramadan traditions with your host family. So the traditions of your home family can always be shared with your host family, as they have been all year. Your favorite dishes, maybe favorite games that you play, traditional clothes that you wear during these special occasions. And we are so excited to see these moments captured and posted on social media. So please do, again, use all of the social media accounts that you know that Yes is very active on. We're so looking forward to seeing how you share your perspective as a Yes student while celebrating Ramadan in the US. One of the ways that you can share photos and videos would be of you doing community service. We know Yes students already do so many hours of volunteerism throughout the year, and I know Ramadan is no exception. Like Hind said, giving of yourself includes giving of your time, and this is one way I think Yes students exemplify the goals of our program. So please do, if you do any activities in the following weeks, please make sure that you share those with us. We look forward to how you will be giving back to your community in that special way. Hind also mentioned the very special food preparations that go on around fasting during Ramadan. And so if you plan on having suhoor or iftar, please show us pictures of you preparing those meals and also enjoying the meal itself with you and your host family or your friends from your host school. We're definitely interested in seeing how you will exchange a meal with some of those very important people. And then last but not least, if you didn't catch those hashtags in the very beginning, it's KLYes, Why Hosting Matters, and Host for America. All right, Hind.
Yeah, so I think, I think you all are already pros at sharing your stories, but I have to underscore what Megan is saying, that it's really critical for you to be able to share your story with the world so that people, first of all, know what the Yes program is, also that you can share with other Yes alumni around the world who, after all, have never experienced Ramadan as Yes students here in America. And this is something that'll help, I think, in the coming years, other Yes students learn, or think about what they can do during Ramadan while they're spending their time here as Yes students. And, it's really, really easy to use Instagram or Snapchat or Twitter or Facebook or any other social media in your regular everyday life. So as you're crafting your present, as you're making your suhoor, as you're, telling a short story about the first time that you fasted, especially if it's like a really funny, story, just tag it with all of the tags, KLYes, Why Hosting Matters, and Host for America, and post it on the internet. It's not, it's also going to be a way for you to remember this very unique Ramadan experience that you've had here.
Thank you, Hind. All right, so we said advocate. What does that mean? It's another word for share. We are asking for those who might be interested. Again, all of these options for you to celebrate Ramadan are optional. They're exactly that, options that are optional. We ask that maybe those of you who are good writers and want to share one last story with your host community, that maybe you write a letter to your local newspaper or to your high school newspaper. You can do this with a host parent or a host sibling, or maybe even a local coordinator or liaison. And we ask that you highlight the combined values and themes of the YES program and Ramadan. And I know you know there are many. Peace is one of them, openness, mutual understanding, community service. These are characteristics shared by all faiths and by many cultures. And of course, they are shared by the YES program. These are some of the principal core values and goals of the program itself. And don't forget, if you choose to go this route and write a letter, please do make sure you thank your host community. They are really the ones who have opened up their homes to you so that you can experience what it's really like to live in the United States and go to an American high school. Volunteerism. So again, I know I mentioned this in the very beginning of the presentation, how great YES students are. In fact, I think Hind has a pretty impressive statistic to share with you all.
Over 76,000 hours of volunteer time or volunteer service that your cohort this year has already served. I mean, that is phenomenal because your year is not over and you have had to also, juggle your other work, your homework, your time with your family, all the other extracurriculars, but you still prioritized giving back and serving the communities that are hosting you. And I think that is absolutely amazing. And it's really inspiring for me, frankly, as I gear up for my own Ramadan kind of service activities that I'm planning on doing. Certainly not going to be reaching any of you, but I'll be thinking of you as I do it. And I also think that, not only is this part of the YES sort of, culture and, ethos, but it's also an Islamic perspective. Service is actually part and parcel of who we are as Muslims. And, many of us already know the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. It says, none of you truly believes until he wishes for his brother what he wishes for himself. And what that means is that you're going to try to make the world more equal, more equitable for the people around you. And the privilege that you have, you want to be able to share that with the people around you, regardless of what their religion is. It's just that we know that all human beings deserve equal right to live in happiness and in security. And so I think even though it might seem like it's nothing, like, yeah, we all do some volunteer work, we all do some service, it's actually a really critical part of our faith and how we see ourselves as human beings.
All right, so here are some ways to volunteer during Ramadan. And I have no doubt that many of you have either participated in one, if not all three of the ways we are going to suggest. The first one is a park or a beach cleanup. This can be very easy. It costs no money and it can be organized just with you and your host family or you and a few classmates.
Yeah, absolutely. And many of us are really familiar with the hadith that says on the authority of Abu Huraira, who said that the Messenger of Allah, peace be upon him, said every small bone of everyone has upon it a charitable act for every day upon which the sun rises. Bringing about justice between two people is an act of charity. Helping a man get on his mount, lifting him onto it, or helping him put his belongings onto it is a charitable act. A good word is a charitable act. Every step you take toward the prayer is a charitable act. And removing a harmful thing from the path is a charitable act. And this is recorded in Bukhari and Muslim. And, we all know that global warming and pollution is a challenge that we all face regardless of where we live in the world. This is something that we view as charity in our faith, but it's also something that we need in order for the world to sort of continue to be safe and healthy. So, yeah.
The next is to participate in a food or a clothing donation drive or to serve at a soup kitchen.
And in the Quran, in Surah Al-Baqarah, we know that God tells us, O you who have believed, spend from the good things which you have earned and from that which we have produced for you from the earth. and do not aim toward the defective therefrom, spending from that while you would not take yourself except with the closed eyes, and know that Allah is free of need and praiseworthy. Again, I think we're all, it's a stroke of luck to be born in the families that we're born in the space and the time that we're in. And a huge part of the month of Ramadan is to build empathy, to learn how other people who might have less than we have, how they feel, how they cope, so that not so that we feel sorry for them, but so that we can also strengthen ourselves in order to change the world, to make sure that everyone has food, everyone has clothing, everyone has shelter. So I think this is another really sort of easy, simple way for us to embody the spirit of the month of Ramadan and the spirit of the YES program ourselves.
Thank you, Hind. And the very last one is to maybe plant a tree or a shrub or a small garden. This does not need to be anything large, and it can even just be with your host family in your backyard. This kind of greening of our world, and potentially even your host family could watch it bloom and be thinking of you.
Yes. One of my very favorite hadiths says that if the day of judgment erupts while you're planting a new tree, carry on, go ahead and plant that tree. And also, if any Muslim plants any plant and a human being or an animal eats of that plant, the Muslim will be rewarded as much as he had given that much in charity. And as Megan said, if you plant, sort of seeds in a garden or a tree or something like that, your host community will remember you for forever, as long as that tree remains standing. It's a really great way to sort of leave your mark here, as well as offer some service for your community.
And so where it's possible, we do encourage you to take part in some of these activities. Again, none of these are required, but they're nice ways for you to share the Ramadan holiday with your host community and your host families, and to share that too with us on social media and have that kind of ripple effect of having one thing occur, like planting a small garden or a shrub, and everyone being able to see it and enjoy it and know that this is how you as a YES student, as you come to the end of your year and show thanks during Ramadan for all that you've been given during the YES program year. It's a wonderful way for things to come, as we call it, full circle.
Exactly. And we only have a couple of weeks, or you only have a couple of weeks here, so you don't have to do all of them. Choose one thing, something that you feel really passionate about, and do that. And don't forget to let us know what you've been up to, taking pictures and video and sharing that on social media.
And now comes the time in case anyone does have any questions. This is our Q&A portion of the webinar. We thank you all for attending. We're really happy to see we had over 22 folks attend. And again, this will be recorded and we'll put it on our YES YouTube channel. But for now, we're really looking to hear if any students or YES program staff have any questions we might be able to answer. You can type those in the chat box. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and thank you for watching.